The Squadcast book by Snickerdoodle, read by Widdershins. Chapter 1. The Beginning. It was another pouring day in Portland as Snickerdoodle, Widdershins, and Lackadaisical huddled underneath a community umbrella, provided by Widdershins against his will. The day was altogether wet. The sky was a sad gray, but underneath the umbrella the only sad things was Snickerdoodle's lack of proper footwear. "My socks are soaked," Snickerdoodle complained, laughing on the outside and crying painfully on the inside. "It's your fault for wearing sneakers," Lackadaisical pointed out, wearing rain boots. Widdershins nodded in agreement. "Okay, listen," Snickerdoodle snapped back as he struggled to come up with a counter-argument. They finally found shelter in Pine Street Market, sitting down at a table and eating their pre-packed lunches. "So, shall we start a recording?" Lackadaisical asked. They had already made plans to record a podcast. "Sure," Snickerdoodle said. Lackadaisical set her phone down on the center of the table and started her recording app. They started a first recording but accidentally deleted it. Then they started what would soon be the first episode of their series, the Squadcast. 3, 2, 1. Lackadaisical counted down. "What do you mean you deleted it?" Snickerdoodle yelled, referring to the previously deleted recording. "Oh yeah, no. Welcome back to another Minecraft Let's Play," Lackadaisical joked. Widdershins and Snickerdoodle quietly cut her off. "No, stop, this is not what we agreed to." After a bit of discussion, the trio had agreed to create nicknames to prevent the internet from knowing their real identities. "I'm going to be Widdershins. It means counterclockwise," Widdershins explained. "I'm Snickerdoodle," Snickerdoodle said flatly, followed by a short silence and a few chuckles. "That's like my name for every gaming thing," he explained. "I'm gonna be Lackadaisical," Lackadaisical said, sparking up a short debate between her and Widdershins regarding whether it was lackadaisical or laxadaisical. The three of them spoke of many random topics throughout the podcast. Being the loose, careless freshmen that they were, they talked about cookies, where Snickerdoodle got his name, and Widdershins' experience with burning cookie trays. They talked about tangerines and whether they should have been called tiny oranges. They talked about how during an apocalyptic future nuclear war, Snickerdoodle would rather buy hot chocolate at a Starbucks than a gun. There were a few stares and head turns following a trio constantly saying hot chocolate or gun. They ended the video with Snickerdoodle yelling, "Save the turtles." Little did they know that plenty of these small jokes and gags would later become running themes throughout the rest of the episodes. It was 2 seasons later when disaster truly struck. Now the Squadcast members all lived in a tower building of their own. It wasn't just the trio this time, as the Squadcast had collected up to 10 members. Snickerdoodle continued to work on the editing, animation, and producing, but Unnamed Child, a member that joined in episode 2 of season 1, helped in every once in a while. The Duke, one of Lackadaisical's friends that joined in from the spin-off rip-off show, The Podcast, was also a member of the Squadcast. The Podcast also consisted of a member known as Satan, though she was not actually a part of the Squadcast. Phantom was a ghost that haunted the building, though he really didn't seem to do much apart from participating in a few episodes here and there. Yestermorrow lurked about, being one of the strangest members of the bunch. He had a side job of dealing cursed images out in shady spaces, though the crew didn't mind, as his cursed image sales were where they got the money to buy themselves a building. Scott Sterling was Phantom's friend, who stuck there as well. He was a clone of the real Scott Sterling, but that didn't stop him from also appearing in an episode from time to time. After all, he was part of the Squadcast. Finally, there was Crystal. She was a shy one who didn't actually live in the Squadcast building, but visited from afar. She made an appearance in the 2nd episode of the 2nd season. This crew of friends were wacky, to say the least, but when it came to the Squadcast, this was the average. Chapter 2. The Average Day. Snickerdoodle yawned, sitting up and stretching. He was ready to start the day. Suddenly a voice came from across the room. "Good morning, Snickerdoodle." "Ah!" Snickerdoodle flopped out of his bed. "Lackadaisical, what are you doing in my room?" he asked her. Lackadaisical simply turned around in her gamer chair. "Snickerdoodle, this is my room." He looked around at the Broadway posters on the wall. He looked at the Animal Crossing stuffed animals sprinkled throughout the room. He looked at the closet filled with rows and rows of pistol hats. This was Lackadaisical. "Yestermorrow," Snickerdoodle yelled, walking through the halls of the building and walking down the stairs. He noticed the door to Widdershins' room. "Hey, Widdershins, have you seen Yestermorrow?" he asked, pausing when he noticed Widdershins stacking a bunch of origami paper cranes. Widdershins turned to see Snickerdoodle. No, he said, slowly walking in front of the crane stack in hopes of blocking it from Snickerdoodle's view. Snickerdoodle looked at him with disappointment in his eyes. Widdershins, please tell me you're not making a paper crane out of paper cranes again, he said. Widdershins paused for a long bit. I'm not sure how to respond to that, he replied. Snickerdoodle sighed and closed the door. He walked down the next floor to see Unnamed Child in the kitchen. Hey, Unnamed Child, first off, have you seen Yestermorrow? Second off, can you please try using Adobe Animate so you can help me with animation despite the fact that it's vector-based and you clearly have a strong preference for pixel-based drawings? He asked. No, Unnamed Child responded immediately. To which one? Snickerdoodle asked. Both, Unnamed Child responded. Snickerdoodle sighed. He walked out into the field to see Phantom and Scott Sterling playing soccer. Hey, have any of you seen Yestermorrow? He yelled. They both shook their heads. Okay. And Scott Sterling, please wear a helmet or something, he reminded him. Scott Sterling always had a tendency to get hit in the head by pretty much anything. Snickerdoodle was about to call Crystal when suddenly he turned around to see Yestermorrow. Ah, finally, he said as he walked to Yestermorrow. Hey, Yestermorrow, I know you're the one who moved me to Lackadaisical's room at night when I was sleeping, Snickerdoodle accused. Yestermorrow looked at him with confusion. What? No, I wasn't. I was up late last night listening to lo-fi music on loudspeakers. Wait, then who? Snickerdoodle looked back to see the Duke spying on them in the bushes. Snickerdoodle sighed, and he looked back at Yestermorrow. Okay, we definitely need to talk about the latter, but I got to deal with this real quickly. Don't go anywhere, he said as he walked over to the Duke. Hey, Duke, what you doing in the bushes over there? Snickerdoodle asked, approaching him. The Duke sprang out from the bushes. Nothing, he responded. He had a walkie-talkie on him. Satan to the Duke. Operation Sabotage the Squad. He threw the walkie-talkie at the wall of the Squadcast building, shattering it to bits. Duke, what was that about? Snickerdoodle asked, unconvincingly, and frankly just tired. The Duke spoke nervously. Method acting, he said, sounding like he was unconvinced himself. Snickerdoodle was about to respond, but was interrupted. Snickerdoodle, I found Yestermorrow. He's by the loudspeakers, Lackadaisical yelled from her room window. Not again. Snickerdoodle ran into the building to deal with the problem. The Duke sighed. He pulled out his backup walkie-talkie. The Duke to Satan. That was way too close. I repeat, that was way too close. Over, he said into the device. Okay, Satan said through the walkie-talkie. Time to bring an end to the Squadcast, the Duke said, giving out an evil laugh. Phantom and Scott Sterling looked up at him. You know we can hear you, right? Phantom asked. Shit. I mean crap, the Duke said just before jumping back into the bushes and making his escape. Scott Sterling stared at the bush. Should we be worried? He asked Phantom. Phantom shrugged. It's probably some theater kid thing. Chapter 3. The Sandwich, Part 1. Unnamed Child was in the kitchen. Hey, Unnamed Child. First off, have you seen Yestermorrow? Second off, can you please try using Adobe Animate so you can help me with animation despite the fact that it's vector-based and you clearly have a strong preference for pixel-based drawing? He asked. No, Unnamed Child responded immediately. To which one? Snickerdoodle asked. Both, Unnamed Child responded. Snickerdoodle sighed and ran outside. Unnamed Child shrugged as he opened up a cupboard and took out a plate. He placed the plate on the counter and went into the pantry to gather supplies. Yestermorrow came in from outside. Oh, hey, I think Snickerdoodle is looking for you, Unnamed Child said casually to Yestermorrow. Yeah, I know. We figured that out, though, he said as he came into the pantry. What are you making? He asked Unnamed Child. A sandwich, Unnamed Child said, continuing his search for ingredients. Hang on, I got the perfect image for this, he said as he reached into his suitcase and pulled out a picture of peanut butter on a phone. Oh no, Unnamed Child chuckled. He finished his search in the pantry and went back to the kitchen. Yestermorrow followed him. Unnamed Child looked at the materials he had gathered. I think we're missing bread, he said. Yeah, that's nice, Yestermorrow said, taking his cursed image back and putting it into the suitcase. Well, I'm gonna go blast some lo-fi music on the loudspeakers, he said as he walked off. Have fun, Unnamed Child said as he opened the fridge to find the bread. Who put the bread in the fridge? He said to himself. Unnamed Child took out the bread and placed it on the counter. He sliced the bread and took the slices, along with some ham and lettuce, to make his sandwich. Snickerdoodle, I found Yestermorrow. He's by the loudspeakers, he heard Lackadaisical yell from up top. He shrugged and placed his plate with a sandwich near the edge of the counter as he went to find some sauce. Suddenly, Snickerdoodle came rushing in. Yestermorrow, he yelled as he rushed by. The wind of his running caused the sandwich and plate to wobble and fall off the counter, breaking both the plate and the sandwich. Sorry, Snickerdoodle yelled from afar as he continued to run. Unnamed Child sighed. He tried picking up the sandwich from the ground, but Scott Sterling and Phantom's soccer ball came flying into the room, bouncing around and then knocking the rest of the materials off the counter. He sighed again. "Looks like I shall make my sandwich elsewhere," he said as he picked up his materials and took them with him. Chapter 4. The Scheme. The podcast started with a group gathering between Lackadaisical and her friends, the Duke and Satan. After creating this brand, they vowed not to let any of the Squadcast members know of it. Lackadaisical later on shared the recording with Snickerdoodle, the boss of the Squadcast. Snickerdoodle then came up with an idea, a scheme. He invited the Duke to an episode of the Squadcast, knowing that anyone who participated in an episode of the Squadcast would become a member of the crew. At first, the Duke was happy to join the episode, but after the video was published, it all became clear. The first podcast episode consisted of the Duke, Lackadaisical, and Satan. Now that the majority of the team were Squadcast members, Snickerdoodle had successfully transformed the podcast episode into a Squadcast episode. The podcast had lost its identity. It was no longer an original, but nothing more than an extension of the Squadcast. Then the Duke created a plan, a scheme. If they simply ended the Squadcast, then they could take the editor, animator, publisher Snickerdoodle and rebrand the building as the team as the podcast, and the Squadcast would be a mere extension of the podcast. It was the perfect scheme. They think they're so great with their animated visuals and their family-friendly content, the Duke monologued from their hidden podcast base, the light from the windows passing through the blinds dramatically to illuminate the Duke's face. "So what's the plan?" Satan asked. The Duke pondered for a bit. "I'm still scheming. But you can keep doing what you're doing to Snickerdoodle. Soon he'll blame one of the other members, and the Squadcast will crumble on its own." Chapter 5. The Pitch Meeting. The next day, Snickerdoodle yawned, sitting up and stretching. He was ready to start the day. Suddenly, a voice came from across the room. "Snickerdoodle." "Ah!" Snickerdoodle flopped out of bed, again. He looked around the room. There were posters of world maps and various national flags. There was a bookshelf full of Tintin books, and a desk dripping with math, and of course, a paper crane made out of paper cranes. "Hey, Widdershins," he said with a sigh, getting up. "Snickerdoodle, I was wondering whether I could direct the Squadcast movie? The one that we were planning on working on?" he suggested to Snickerdoodle. Yeah, sure, whatever," Snickerdoodle responded without actually paying attention as he walked across the room. "Oh, okay, cool," Widderson said with surprise. Snickerdoodle walked downstairs. "Okay, guys, today's the pitch meeting. Let's all head over to the filming studio and pitch some movie ideas," he announced. The Squadcast members all gathered in the garage. The room had a green screen sheet set up with various lights. There was a big camera and a few cheap chairs scattered throughout. There was a long table where all the Squadcast members sat at. Lackadaisical sat in the spinny chair, racing towards it and claiming it, despite the fact that no one was competing for it in the first place. Widderson sat in the wooden chair. It was about the most average chair there was, like the first image you see when you looked up the word chair. Phantom simply floated at sitting level. Unnamed Child sat on a yoga ball. Yestermara sat in a deflated beanbag that was in desperate need of refilling. Scott Sterling sat on the chair that they stole from their high school. The Duke sat in a little kindergartner chair, looking around suspiciously with hands out in an evil position, tapping each other. He was ready to attack. Snickerdoodle sat in the average Hollywood studio chair, his director hat on and his director microphone in hand. "Okay, guys, we need an idea for the Squadcast movie. What do you guys have?" he asked, getting out his clipboard, pen, and paper to write down ideas, and putting on computer glasses purely for the aesthetics. Actually, Snickerdoodle?" Widdershins asked, tapping his shoulder. "Yeah," Snickerdoodle answered. "Since you agreed to let me be the director, I think I should be the one jotting down the prompts," Widdershins explained. "I did what now?" Snickerdoodle asked. "Thanks," Widdershins said, as he took his director microphone and hat. He put on his computer glasses and took his clipboard, pen, and paper. "Okay, guys, we need an idea for the Squadcast movie. What do you guys have?" he asked the group. Snickerdoodle was pushed into Widdershins' average wooden chair, speechless and confused. "We could do an epic fantasy romance comedy with adventure, action, and explosions, and dinosaurs," Lackadaisical said with enthusiasm. Snickerdoodle interjected. "Actually, we can't exactly," Widdershins cut him off. "That's a good idea. Let's put that in." He wrote down what Lackadaisical said. Snickerdoodle looked at Widdershins with concern. "Widdershins, you can't possibly think that this is going to work," he urged Widdershins. "Any other ideas?" Widdershins asked, ignoring Snickerdoodle. "What if I was the main character of the movie?" Phantom put out. Snickerdoodle opened his mouth to speak, but Widdershins simply said, "Great idea," jotting down notes. Snickerdoodle slammed his head down on the table in defeat. We can make the score of the movie entirely out of Louis Zong music, Yestermara said. Snickerdoodle groaned. We could make it live action, the Duke said. Snickerdoodle banged his head down on the table repeatedly. Or we could have Snickerdoodle animated, hand-drawn animation, frame by frame, 30 frames per second, Unnamed Child added in, making a sandwich in the process. Okay, Snickerdoodle yelled out in defeat, getting up from his chair at such a speed that the chair fell over. Widdershins, I can't take this anymore. You have to say no to at least some of these ideas. Widdershins thought about it. No, he said hesitantly. What? Why? You told me I had to say no to some ideas. Other than the idea that I just brought up, Snickerdoodle yelled. The Duke smiled. He reached to his walkie-talkie. The plan is playing out. I repeat, the plan is playing out. Over, he whispered into it. Okay, said back. Everyone in the room stared at the Duke as he slowly put the walkie-talkie back in his pocket. So are we ready to record? Great, let's record, he said with a fake smile, as he quickly sat up and walked away. Chapter 6. The Sandwich Part 2. Unnamed Child woke up with a yawn as he heard the usual Snickerdoodle scream. Looks like Snickerdoodle had ended up in a different room again. He got up and immediately headed to the kitchen, seeing Snickerdoodle in Widdershins' room as he passed by. He walked down the stairs and went to the pantry, where he once again found his ingredients. This time he put them in his backpack as he was ready to make his sandwich on the go. He heard Snickerdoodle's voice from the floor above, yelling, Okay guys, today's the pitch meeting. Let's all head over to the filming studio room and pitch some movie ideas. He sighed as he put his backpack on and headed to the garage. He sat down on his usual yoga ball as he waited for the other members to sit down. He carefully placed down all his ingredients and began his sandwich making. Okay guys, we need an idea for the Squadcast movie. What do you guys have? Snickerdoodle asked. Unnamed Child was half paying attention, as making a ham cheese sandwich was not a task for the careless. He faintly heard others begin to pitch in ideas for the movie. He heard someone say live action and assumed they were joking, seeing how it would be impossible for anyone to convince Snickerdoodle to make something live action instead of animated. Or we could just have Snickerdoodle animate it, hand-drawn animation, frame by frame, 30 frames per second, he joked. He sliced the bread, placing it down. He put the lettuce, and then the ham, then the cheese, then the sauce, then the other slice of bread. He had successfully made his second sandwich, but it wasn't done yet. As some sort of fight was breaking out on the other side of the table, Yestermara leaned in to see what Unnamed Child was doing. Hey, are you done making your sandwich? He asked. Unnamed Child stared at his sandwich. No, I have to toast it, he said. After all, it would be a shame to eat such a sandwich without it even being toasted. The plan is playing out. I repeat, the plan is playing out. Over, the Duke whispered into some sort of device. Okay, a voice replied. Unnamed Child briefly looked up from the sandwich. Everyone was staring at the Duke. So are we ready to record? Great, let's go record, the Duke said, as he quickly walked away. Unnamed Child assumed the meeting was over, and he left the table with his sandwich, packing up his materials so as not to leave them out in the open. He wandered off to search for the perfect place to toast his sandwich. Unfortunately, all the other members had followed Unnamed Child, and they seemed to be in a quicker rush than he was. They sped past him as they knocked him about, knocking the sandwich out of his hands. The ham and cheese sandwich had landed on the floor with a sad splat. He sighed. Looks like he'd have to make his sandwich in an environment where he'd be undisturbed. Chapter 7. The Misunderstanding. The day after the pitch meeting, Snickerdoodle was waiting in his room, not having any particular role in the movie. The editing had gone to Unnamed Child, and the cameraman would be Phantom. Snickerdoodle wouldn't be surprised if Phantom shot the entire movie vertically. Down in the garage, they were already starting to make the movie. Widdershins sat in the director chair, basically saying yes to every idea. Yestermara was prepared to download all of the Louis Zong songs. Unnamed Child was not editing, as there was no footage to edit, so he had plenty of time to make his sandwich. Phantom was hanging around the camera, not bothering to figure out how it worked. Scott Sterling was hanging around with Phantom, talking with him. Lackadaisical was up in her room, finding her dinosaur costume, as that was her role. The Duke was off in the corner, supposedly reading his script. Snickerdoodle walked into the room. Seeing everyone working on something, he directly walked over to Widdershins. Hey Widdershins, can I talk to you for a second? He asked. Widdershins looked up from his chair. Yeah, what's up? He asked. Why does every Squadcast member have a role in this movie except for me? He asked. What do you mean? Of course you have a role, Widdershins said, pointing to his name on the roles chart. Snickerdoodle's name was put next to Bush. Widdershins, being a bush does not count as a role, Snickerdoodle said, sounding like he was trying not to burst out in flames. Bushes are for stage plays. This is a movie. We don't even need anyone to play a bush. Widdershins looked at the page with confusion. Wait, what? Your role wasn't a bush. I was going to make you co-director, he explained. Snickerdoodle looked at him. Really? Snickerdoodle asked. Wait, who printed out the roles? The building! The Duke yelled all of a sudden. Everyone once again turned to look at the Duke. It's part of the script, the Duke said nervously. Snickerdoodle and Widdershins looked at each other and nodded in agreement. It was obviously the Duke. Chapter 8. The Better Scheme. Down in the garage, they were already starting to make the movie. The Duke was in the corner, pretending to read his script. He had his walkie-talkie in hand, listening to Satan, who was back at their base. Listen, I already sabotaged their script, but it's not enough. We need to do bigger if we want to get rid of the Squadcast. Let's come up with some ideas, he said. We could set something on fire, Satan suggested. We could poison Snickerdoodle's drink, the Duke suggested. We could set something on fire, Satan suggested again. We could set up traps throughout the building, Home Alone style, the Duke suggested. Can we please set something on fire? Satan asked. Got it. We're going to set it on fire. Then when they watch as their building burns, they'll come crawling to the podcast base, and they'll have no options but to serve under the podcast. The Squadcast would be no more, the Duke monologued. What are we going to set on fire? Satan asked cluelessly. The building, Duke yelled. Everyone in the room turned to him. It's part of the script, he said as a cover-up. Everyone went back to what they were doing, except for Widdershins and Snickerdoodle. Crap, they're on to us. Satan, come to the Squadcast building and find something to light it on fire with. Your name is Satan, so I'm sure you'll figure it out, he said before turning off his walkie-talkie and putting it in his pocket, before turning back to face Widdershins and Snickerdoodle, who were approaching him. Chapter 9. The Spark. Satan sighed. Guess I'll have to go then, she said as she left the base. She snuck her way into the Squadcast building. It was fairly easy, seeing how their only security system was just Phantom if he paid enough attention. Satan made her way in through the front door, surprised that it was unlocked. She headed in and made her way around, looking for something to start a fire. For a bunch of crazy high schoolers, there was a surprising lack of fire starters. All she needed was a good idea, a spark. She figured out that perhaps the best way to start was the kitchen, as she made her way around. She found herself in the garage, immediately hiding behind a box of props. Everyone seemed to be in the garage. This was too perfect. She eavesdropped on the conversation going on with Snickerdoodle, Widdershins, and the Duke. Duke, just because you have the villain role doesn't mean that you have to act like a villain all the time, Snickerdoodle said with a disappointed, this should be obvious type tone. It's method acting? The Duke said nervously. Told you it was a theater kid thing, Phantom mumbled to Scott Sterling from the other end of the room. Satan shook her head. She needed to focus. She snuck back from the garage and finally found the kitchen. She looked around the kitchen. Should she turn on the stove? The oven? Then the perfect target came into view. The toaster was on. She grinned wickedly. She looked through the drawers until she found a fork. She grabbed a handful and jammed the ball into the toaster until smoke began coming out. Electric sparks began coming out of the toaster until it seemed to be on the brink of exploding. Unnamed Child came into the kitchen, hearing all the noise. He froze at the sight of Satan next to the fork-jammed toaster. All I wanted was to toast my sandwich, he sighed. Chapter 10. The Sandwich, Part 3. Unnamed Child left the garage, remaking his sandwich for the third time. Sliced bread, lettuce, ham, cheese, sauce, and other slice of bread. He sighed with relief and quickly ran from the garage, figuring the sooner he got away from the Squadcast members, the better. He ran into the kitchen and put his sandwich filling on a plate and placed the 2 slices of bread in the toaster. He smiled. Nothing could ruin this now. He plastic wrapped the filling on the plate, making sure that it would not be ruined if it knocked on the floor. He decided to head back to the garage. He went to the garage and sat down, only to hear a strange noise. It seemed to be coming from the kitchen. Was somebody messing with his sandwich? He slowly stood up and walked his way into the kitchen, turning the corner to see Satan? What was she doing here? Satan turned back to look at him, revealing the burning, fork-stabbed toaster. He sighed. All I wanted was to toast my sandwich. Satan looked at the toaster. Sorry about that, she said. Unnamed Child shrugged. Nah, it's fine. I've remade the sandwich 3 times. I'm honestly too tired to react at this point. The toaster began to buzz and whiz. Sparks began bursting out as its surrounding walls began to catch fire. That can't be good, Unnamed Child said as he ran from the kitchen. He ran into the garage where the rest of the crew was. Hey, everyone, he yelled. Everyone turned to him, silent and stopping what they were doing immediately. There's like a fire or something in the kitchen. Chapter 11. The Fire. I'm sorry, what? Snickerdoodle asked in disbelief. The sound of glass shattering broke the silence. Everybody gasped and looked at Snickerdoodle. Snickerdoodle looked back at everyone, kind of glad that he was back in the lead. Okay, guys, we should probably get out of this building, he said as he tried to open the garage doors. He looked at the doors. They were jammed by none other than the Duke. Duke, what are you doing? He asked. Ha! Now the Squadcast reign will be over, and the podcast will replace it as the main channel, he yelled. He had practiced saying that phrase for the past week. Duke, you do realize you guys are trapped in here with us, right? Wittershins pointed out. The Duke looked around. Oh, right. I did not think about that, he said. Well, at least we can go out the front door, Scott Sterling pointed out. Suddenly, the exit to the garage door burst into flames, blocking one of their only other exits. Never mind, I apologize for jinxing that. We have to get out of here, Snickerdoodle panicked. Got it, Phantom said as he immediately left through the walls. Snickerdoodle sighed. Follow me, he yelled as he walked to their last exit door. It would lead to the outside of the building, so they wouldn't have to deal with the fire. Snickerdoodle tried opening the door, pulling with all his might. It won't budge, he said. Let me try, the Duke said, pulling on it as well. I literally just said it wouldn't budge, Snickerdoodle said. The Duke and Snickerdoodle proceeded to argue about it as everybody else worked out on either finding an escape or stopping the fire from spreading. The fire made its way into the garage now, following a trail of printed-out cursed images. Why did you do that? Wittershins yelled at Yestermorrow. I don't know. I think I had a plan, but I forgot it. Honestly, I am very sleep-deprived, Yestermorrow explained, holding a Sprite cranberry can. His tired attitude and drink in hand made him look very much drunk on Sprite cranberry. All hope seemed to be lost as the entire Squadcast crew was huddled in the corner by the door Snickerdoodle and the Duke had been fighting over. As the fire drew closer to them, Snickerdoodle had realized something. They were missing something. Or someone. The door suddenly opened as everybody toppled out from leaning on it. They looked up to see who had saved them. Lackadaisical? Snickerdoodle asked. Where were you? Upstairs practicing my script. I needed my dinosaur hoodie, she explained. Really, the whole role was an excuse for her to wear her dinosaur hoodie. As they left the building, she explained how she could smell the smoke from the fire, being on the floor above the kitchen, so she escaped from her window and made her way down to the garage. I don't understand. How did you open the door? Snickerdoodle asked. It's a push door on your end, not a pull, she said. Snickerdoodle and the Duke both facepalmed. The crew looked back at the Squadcast building, watching it crumble down. So, is this the end of the Squadcast? Satan asked them. What? No, Snickerdoodle said. Satan and the Duke looked at them, confused. We're just going to go back to living like regular high schoolers. We don't need a building to make Squadcast episodes, Wittershins pointed out. Though we won't really be able to make a short film by this point, Unnamed Child said. Snickerdoodle thought about it. You know, maybe I'll just write a book instead. They all agreed and began to walk their separate ways back home. Hey, Snickerdoodle, I was wondering whether I could write the Squadcast book? Wittershins asked. Snickerdoodle looked at him and smiled. Absolutely not. Chapter 12. The Ending. Now the Squadcast is back to normal, going to school and making YouTube videos on the side. Snickerdoodle was back to working on animating, editing, and producing all the Squadcast episodes, but he wasn't doing all the work in the channel. Unnamed Child had started a gaming series and was able to make as many perfect ham cheese sandwiches as he wanted. Wittershins had started several series, including art tutorials, ranking videos, and reviews on the accuracy of certain songs. Lackadaisical continued to be the countdown person in nearly every episode of the Squadcast. Yestermorrow had started putting his cursed images on display throughout the internet for free. Now everyone could witness his pure insanity. Phantom and Scott Sterling continued to hang out with each other. As for the Duke and Satan, nobody knows. Some say they're still plotting their revenge to this day. The end. Unless this gets popular somehow, then we may just make a sequel. Stay tuned. The end. Unless this gets popular somehow. Alright, sorry about that. Frickin' train just made noise, so let's try that ending again. Okay, we'll just wait a second now. You done? Nope, apparently train's not done. I don't know if the recording can actually hear this, but it's loud enough that, okay, I think it's done. The end.